Come forward and sit, and I'm going to invite Brother Anwar Tawfiq. He is from MLFA, Muslim Legal Fund of America, and he is the outreach director of MLFA. So Brother Anwar Tawfiq.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala anbiya'i wal mursalin. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'du, a'udhu billahi as-sami'ul 'alim minash shaitanir rajim. Inna Allaha ya'muru bil 'adli wal ihsan وَإِيتَاءِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى وَيَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنكَرِ وَالْبَغْيِ يَعِظُكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. I recited this short ayah from Surah Nahl, and alhamdulillah, I will come back to it because I want to do the introduction, and inshallah we'll come back to this ayah. Just think that I am almost sure that 99% of the brothers and sisters here have heard this ayah almost every Friday. 99% to 100% of the khatib around the world, not just in US or just in Saudi Arabia or just in Pakistan or India, around the world recite this ayah, because this is also a sunnah.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Jazakallah khairan, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to Uncle Anwar. He spoke a little bit longer tonight than I've ever actually heard him speak. Usually Uncle Anwar only talks for 10 to 15 minutes, but tonight he spoke for an hour. So congratulations to you for listening. I'm very impressed, alhamdulillah. Uncle, for those who are asking about books, just have them write book on their pledge form. I was born in Phoenix, Arizona in 1983. I've lived in Phoenix, Arizona all of my life, with the exception of when I was in the military. When I was in the military, it was 3 years. I was living in Fort Leonard, Missouri, which is essentially the methamphetamine capital of the United States. My mother and father, in my opinion, were not prepared to have children. They didn't know what they were getting themselves into. They didn't understand it. They didn't understand the responsibility of being a parent. They didn't understand what it meant to be an adult. You know, how a home is purchased, how bills are paid. They weren't prepared for this. My mother was only 17 when I was born. My father was 18. They were not ready to have children. But they grew up on Disney. They grew up on CBS. They grew up believing that if they got married and had kids, they would live life happily ever after. The bills would somehow get paid. A home would somehow present itself. All these things would fall into place because that's what TV had showed them. When reality set in, alcoholism found its way into my home. Alcoholism and addiction, and infidelity, and emotional and physical neglect and abuse. And about the time that I was 7, my parents decided that it was time for them to separate. Both of them needed to grow up. Both of them needed to mature and become adults on their own. They weren't capable of doing it as a married unit. They needed to separate and grow up on their own. Neither one of them felt capable of having the responsibility of raising a child on their own. As a result of such, I was sent to live with my grandparents. Now this was a blessing for me in hindsight. My grandparents had already had children. They had already gone through this. They knew what they were getting themselves into. My grandfather was from England. He was a very devout Catholic. My grandmother was from Virginia. She was a Protestant. Being that the two of them didn't agree which version of Christianity was the right version of Christianity to follow, they didn't tell me that I had to be a Catholic or that I had to be a Protestant. To tell me that I would have to be a Catholic would be putting my grandmother down. To tell me that I have to be a Protestant would be putting my grandfather down. This isn't what they wanted to do. They wanted to create a stable and firm home. So they told me to treat people the way that I would want to be treated, to respect people, to be polite, to value my education, and to go out and learn. In a home that is divided upon religion, I think that's probably the best advice that you can give to a child. Treat people the way that you want to be treated. Respect them. Value your education, go out and learn. I took the education part a little too seriously. We were in perhaps 8th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, somewhere around the middle school time. And we were preparing for an exam that we were about to have in World War II. And the teacher, Mrs. Pearl, she asked us, class, who was responsible for killing the most number of people during World War II? And there's a girl in the back, she raises her hand, and Mrs. Pearl calls on her, and she says, Adolf Hitler. And Mrs. Pearl says, that's correct. And I thought to myself, no, it's not. That's not right. I raise my hand, I go, Mrs. Pearl, that's not correct. What do you mean, Carrie? Well, it's not Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler killed 16 million people. You know, but yeah, that's a lot, but Joseph Stalin killed 22. You asked who killed the most number of people in World War II, the answer would be Joseph Stalin. So she asked me to turn to a particular page in the textbook and read the bottom corner. I turn to the page, I start reading the bottom corner aloud in front of the class. And sure enough, as I'm reading my textbook, I read aloud to the rest of the class that Adolf Hitler was responsible for killing the most number of people during World War II. Despite knowing that it wasn't the right answer, despite knowing that it was not fact, I was reading it to the class because that was what was written in our textbook. And I'm happy that that experience happened to me at such a young age, because when that happened, I realized that what I was learning in school was not in fact the truth. What I was learning in the American textbooks, in our public textbooks, was not the truth. It was the American version of the truth. It was the version of the companies and organizations that print our textbooks. It was their version of the truth. So I started spending more of my time going to the public library, more of my time going on the internet and studying what we were learning about in school. Oftentimes, I would end up getting answers wrong on tests because I would not put the answer that was in our textbooks. I would put the answer that was the correct answer. This extracurricular studying actually helped me graduate a year and a half early, 3 semesters early. I went to night school, I went to summer classes, I wanted to get out of high school. It was an absolute waste of time. If you have children and you have the ability to send them to a private school, send them to a private school. Inshallah, they'll get a job and they'll be able to take care of you when you're older. If you don't, you send them to public school, I don't know, they're going to work at Taco Bell. They're probably not going to be able to help you when you're older. It's up to you what you do. I finished high school a year and a half early and I went to a trade school. I received a degree in audio engineering, and at that point in time I had 2 options. I could either go and pursue a career in audio engineering, working within a record studio, helping engineer and take care of the sound and the tracks and setting up the recording equipment and whatnot. In order to do this, I've been involved in an internship, a 1-year internship, either in New York or Los Angeles. Both are very expensive places to live. Very expensive if you're not getting paid. That's what an internship is. My other option, work at Taco Bell. So I had to work at Taco Bell. I started that, and it was a very miserable career. While I was doing this, I turned 18, and once I had turned 18, I took a look in the mirror, and I realized that I was essentially going down the same path that my father had gone down when he was 18. I didn't want to become like my father. I didn't want to amount to that. I wanted to change the name Holdbrooks. I wanted the name Holdbrooks to be something to be proud of. Nobody in my family had graduated high school until I had come. Nobody had gone to college. I wanted to do something more. I wanted to make our name something to be, just wow, okay, that's awesome. I want to be Holdbrooks. If I ever had children, I would want them to be proud of their father. But I was going down the same road that my dad was. I was staying out all night. I was drinking and driving. I had already started smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day by the time I was 18. My arms were covered in tattoos by the time I was 18, both arms. And that's why I wear a thobe, so that way you don't chase me out of here and try to set me on fire or throw rocks at me or something. If I wear a thobe, you're happy with my appearance. I was going down a disastrous road, and I knew that I had a brain on my shoulders. I was just lazy. Truth be told, I was a privileged, middle-class white kid in America. I never had to work hard for anything in my life. Everything has been given to me. I've never grown up in struggle and had to deal with poverty. I've never had to walk a mile or 2 to get fresh water. I've never had to deal with anything that some of you have had to deal with. Lived in America all my life. I was lazy. I lacked discipline. That was what I needed. That was what I was looking for. Just because you turn 18, it doesn't mean you're an adult. It doesn't mean you understand what being an adult is. It doesn't mean you're a responsible individual. It's just an age, just a number. I was looking for something more. I needed something more. I wanted to be an adult. I wanted to grow and develop, but I didn't know where. I didn't know where I could find this structure, where I could find this order, where I could find this discipline. So I get off of the shift one night, I come home, I turn on the tube, and I start watching, and I see this commercial, and it says, be all that you can be. And that was what I was looking for. That's what I needed. I wanted to be all that I could be. Whoever came up with that slogan, be all that you can be, I hope that guy got a pay raise, because I guarantee you thousands of people enlisted in the Army from that one slogan. Be all that you can be. It's simple, it rhymes, it's easy to remember. I woke up the next morning, I was singing that song in the shower as I was washing myself. I decided, you know what, that's it, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the recruiters, I'm going to go to the Army. It'll look good on a job application. I'll always be able to have a job if I'm a veteran. This is a good thing, this is a good step, I should do this. I was convinced, I was going. I gathered my paperwork, you know, I got my high school diploma, my college degree, my birth certificate, my social security card. I went to the recruiters, and I walked in, and I sat down, and I said, hey, I want to join the Army. And the recruiter looks at me, and kind of smiles, and it's okay, we don't need you. Have a good day. He kind of pushes me out the door. I was confused. I was genuinely confused. 9/11 had happened not that many months earlier, and for some reason we were going to war with Iraq. We've had 13 years to figure it out now, and I still don't know what the connection was, but we were going to war with Iraq for some reason, because they had something to do with 9/11 supposedly, so we were going to need soldiers. Why did the recruiter say no to me? What was wrong with me? Why was I not good enough? I thought about it, and then I got home, and that night I looked in the mirror, and I thought to myself, maybe being covered in tattoos, maybe having all these piercings, maybe having blue hair, isn't what the recruiter was looking for. You see, back in 2002, all the cool kids weren't wearing tight pants and buying iPhones like they do today. The cool kids in 2002 were joining the Army. 9/11 had just happened. Many people were feeling very overly patriotic, very zealous. They wanted to join, they wanted to serve, they wanted to defend their country. If you didn't have the money to go to some nice Ivy League school, you went and joined the Army so you could get money for college. Bunches and bunches of kids were going. So when the recruiter saw me, when he saw tattoos and piercings and blue hair, he thought to himself, that's trouble. I don't want that, that's trouble. I'll wait. I'll wait a little bit later. I'll wait a couple hours. I'll wait a couple days. I'll get somebody from the football team. I'll get somebody from the basketball team. I'll get an athlete. Athletes make better warriors. Athletes make better soldiers. I'll wait. I'll get an athlete. I'm not going to take him, he's trouble. So I went back to work, making the wonderful Burrito Supreme. Let me tell you the thing about the Burrito Supreme. The Burrito Supreme has a thin layer of sour cream in it. It's not a horrible layer, but it's a thin layer of sour cream. Now, people in America, they're usually distracted when they're coming up and doing something. You might see it when you go to Starbucks and buy your $7 coffee in the morning. You know, you have this person, they're sitting there on their iPhone, they're talking about this, that, and the other. They throw some money at the register, they say what drink they want, they walk away. They don't say hello or good morning or how are you. They're not polite. They just carry on in their conversation and throw the money. So I'm working at Taco Bell, and this lady comes up and she orders a Burrito Supreme, and she's on her phone, she's chatting away, and she throws some money at me, and she goes on, and I go and I make her the Burrito Supreme, I bring it back to her. She goes, she takes it down, she sits and starts eating, and she realizes there's sour cream in it. And she comes back up and she starts yelling at me. She starts talking about how incompetent I am. She starts talking about how I'm probably a dropout and a failure, and how I've probably got all kinds of kids, and I'm on welfare, and I'm what's wrong with our country because I made her burrito without sour cream, and she specifically asked for no sour cream. I know that she didn't. She was on the phone the whole time. She was self-absorbed. But I had to pay rent. I needed food. So that job at Taco Bell, I couldn't just tell her no. I couldn't tell her, I'm sorry ma'am, you're wrong. You were on your phone and self-absorbed. I had to go back and remake the burrito and give it to her the way that she wanted. And I had to smile and say, thank you for telling me how low of a human you think I am. Have a good day. So another week goes by, this Taco Bell business, I'm starting to get really frustrated. I go back to the recruiter. I've shaved my head at this point. I go in, I sit down, I say, hey, I want to join the Army. He goes, that's okay. We still don't need you. Stop coming here. It's okay. Another week at Taco Bell, get really frustrated. I go back to the recruiters again. Hey, I want to join the Army. Yeah, we know. You want to join the Army. What do you want to do in the Army? I thought that was a very dumb question. I grew up watching G.I. Joe. What do you do in the Army? You kill people and you get paid for it. That's what I wanted to do in the Army. He said, it's okay. We still don't need you. Another week at Taco Bell. 4 weeks. Literally, I had to go to the recruiter 4 times. Finally, I come in, I sit down, I tell him, I'm frustrated. You know I'm not going to give up. I keep coming, week after week after week. I want to join the Army. Why am I not good enough? What do I have to do? He says, all right, I'll take you downtown, you can take your ASVAB. For those of you who don't know, the ASVAB is a government standardized test that allows for the government to figure out your aptitudes. What that really means is it's a government test that allows for them to figure out how they can best exploit you. If you're not a very intelligent individual, they'll make you a mechanic, they'll stick you in a motor pool, or maybe they'll make you a supply specialist or something simple. If you've got a bit of a brain on your shoulders, they might make you into a linguist or an interrogator. If you do have a good brain upstairs, they'll make you into a lawyer or a physician or a dentist. There's 212 careers in the military. Only 40 some odd involve combat. Everything else that civilians do, you do in service as well. Now, I believe that my recruiter, he was under the idea that if I went and took this test, I would score very poorly. And then he could just tell me, you're too dumb. Stop coming. You're too dumb. We don't need you. So he takes me downtown. He tells me to go upstairs and take the test. I go upstairs and take the test. I go home, and I realize when I get home that I have 2 missed voicemails from my recruiter. I don't know how I scored on the test, but I have 2 missed voicemails, both of them asking that I call him back quickly. The next morning, I called him back, and he said, hey, let's get together. Let's have some breakfast. Let's talk about your possible career options. We went up for breakfast that morning, somehow managed to spend $60 on breakfast. I don't know how you can spend $60 on eggs, toast, and cantaloupe, but we did. He was wining and dining me. He was showing me the best of the best. Then he takes me back to the office. He tells me, you did well. You scored very well. I'm sorry that I've been busy these last few weeks and I haven't been able to help you. But we would like to have you join our armed forces. What is it that you would like to do in the Army? Now, I hadn't really put a great deal of thought to this. I hadn't put a considerable amount of thought to it. The first thing that popped into my head, unfortunately, was, what job is giving a bonus? When you say that to a recruiter, that's about the sweetest words they can possibly hear. What job is giving a bonus? That's just, they can't hear anything better. You know, if somebody like me came walking into the masjid right now, but they didn't have a beard, and they didn't have a thobe on, and they said, hey, I want to become a Muslim, is there anything better that we could hear? I mean, how many of us would just get up and go running to them, oh, brother, just say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, it's so good for you, what do you do? We'd be very excited about it. We'd all go running to it. That's what it's like for a recruiter when you say, what job is giving a bonus? I said, what job is giving a bonus? And for a $2,000 enlistment bonus, I became a military police officer in the United States Army. I had no interest in being a police officer. That was what I had set out to do. I didn't want to be a cop. I'm afraid of cops. I'm still afraid of cops today. I was afraid of cops when I wasn't. Afraid of the FBI and the CIA and all the rest of them. I don't like people with badges and uniforms. Because when you give a small person, an unintelligent person, a badge and a uniform, very bad things happen. And I'm going to tell you about it in great detail. I enlisted in August of 2002. I finished basic training and advanced training in December of 2002. I was stationed in Fort Leonard, Missouri. I got married to my first wife in March of 2003, and I found out in May of 2003 that I was going to Guantanamo. This all happened very quickly. I had only been in the Army for 5 months at the point in time I found out that I was going to Guantanamo. I didn't think to myself to go home and Google Guantanamo, and if I did, I probably would have spelled it wrong. According to Google search, 98% of Americans think that there's an I in Guantanamo. I don't think that I'm smarter than 98% of people, so I probably would have spelled it wrong as well. And even if I had managed to spell it correctly, back in 2003, Guantanamo wasn't in the news. Guantanamo wasn't on the internet. I wouldn't have found anything for Guantanamo. Guantanamo didn't exist yet as far as the media was concerned. I thought to myself that I just got married. My wife gave up her life, her family, her friends, her job. She traveled across from Arizona to Fort Leonard, Missouri, methamphetamine capital of the U.S. She doesn't know anybody here, and now I'm leaving for a year. I felt terrible. I felt horrible about it. I promised her that we were going to have this nice life together, and here I am leaving, 2 months later. So I spent the last few days that I had making sure that we had a stable and strong relationship. I wanted to come home and still have a wife. We conducted our training in Fort Dix, New Jersey. I mentioned the location for a number of reasons. The first is that there is no correctional facility in Fort Dix, New Jersey. There's no prison in Fort Dix, New Jersey. So I was training to work in a prison but not in a prison. We made a prison with PVC pipes and plastic wire. It was make-believe. We had to pretend each day that we were in a prison. The manual that we were using was from Fort Knox. For those of you who don't know, Fort Knox houses money. It doesn't house detainees. It doesn't house Muslims. It houses money. So I was being trained in a fake prison with a manual on how to guard money to work in a real prison guarding Muslims. The individuals who were training me had never been to Guantanamo. They work in prisons in the US with average Americans who had been charged, tried, and convicted, who had had due process. They didn't know anything about Guantanamo. The topping on the cake, as far as I'm concerned, has anybody in the room seen Jersey Shore on TV? Usually nobody admits to it. You're an honest person, that's good. It's upon the road. We're training in Fort Dix, New Jersey, and we don't have any criminals to train with. I've seen Jersey Shore. I know there are plenty of criminals in New Jersey. The place is loaded with them. But we didn't have any criminals. So for half the day, I would be the criminal, and half the day, I would be the police officer. Let's go over. Let's have a quick review. Fake facility, wrong manual, bad trainers, no criminals. This is not a good recipe. But this is what the Army thought was going to make a successful situation. Now, when it came to teaching us about Islam, it was distinctly different. The Army did a great job teaching me about Islam. Everything that I needed to know about Islam to work in Guantanamo, the Army taught me. They taught me day in, day out. Every half hour almost, I would hear the same indoctrination regarding Islam. When we get to Guantanamo, do not be complacent. The detainees in Guantanamo are the worst of the worst. They're Al-Qaeda, they're the Taliban, they're the Mujahideen. They hate you. They hate you because you're white. They hate you because you have freedom. They hate you because you're an American. They hate you because you love Christ. They hate you because you have everything that they want and they can't have. Do not be complacent. These men want nothing more than to kill you. We would hear this day in and day out, upwards of at least 10 to 15 times a day. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with how military units are set up, 3 soldiers makes a team. 3 to 4 teams makes a squad. 3 or 4 squads makes a platoon. 3 or 4 platoons makes a company. Each one of these measurements has a leader, meaning a team leader, a squad leader, a platoon sergeant, and a company leader, which would usually be 2 people. That would be the captain and the first sergeant. Now, if there were a couple of soldiers together, the team leaders would come up and they would tell us about the worst of the worst. They would tell us about Al-Qaeda and the Mujahideen. They would tell us to be vigilant, to not be complacent, because they wanted nothing more than to kill us. They wanted nothing more than our blood. If their whole platoon was together, the platoon sergeant would tell us a little bit more. He would explain to us who the Mujahideen were. He would explain to us who the Taliban were, who the Al-Qaeda were. The Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, they were the worst of the worst. They were dirt farmers. They were sand diggers and camel-lit Charkies and Talibs. These were the common phrases that we heard day after day regarding Islam. This is what they taught us. This is what they indoctrinated us to believe. And I'm not saying that it's something that our army is doing only. Every army does this. When you can make the enemy into an object, when you can make the enemy beneath the level of a human, when you make the enemy into an animal, nobody is going to hesitate to hurt. Nobody is going to hesitate to torture and abuse. Because it's not a person, it's an object. It's an animal. You won't feel bad about it. You can compartmentalize your grief and your misery. This is what the Army wanted. This was the desired results. Twice a day, we would have an accountability formation. Accountability formations to make sure that all the soldiers are still present, that nobody has left, that nobody has gone AWOL. And during that time, the first sergeant would brief us. Men, I'm sure you're hearing it day in and day out. Do not be complacent when we get to Guantanamo. I'm going to tell you firsthand, remember what happened on 9/11. Do not be complacent when we get to Guantanamo. When we get to Guantanamo, I want you to remember the people that you're fighting for. Think about your families. Think about your children and your loved ones. Do not be complacent. Remember what these people did to us. The Army taught me everything I needed to know about Islam to work in Guantanamo. We finished our 2 weeks of wonderful training. We got on a plane to fly from Fort Dix, New Jersey to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. And we landed 45 minutes later. And I think to myself, there's something wrong here. There's no way that we possibly got to Cuba from New Jersey in 45 minutes. Maybe somebody didn't fill up the plane, or maybe there's something wrong with the plane. What's the deal? Why are we getting off the plane? We get off the plane, I look around, and there's all these tall buildings everywhere, and you know, it's smoggy and dirty, and people are rude, and there's halal food on every corner. Turns out we were in New York City. Our commander had arranged for us to go to New York City that day. He wanted us to go to Ground Zero that day. He wanted Ground Zero to be the last piece of American soil that we saw. He wanted us to walk around and see the flowers and photographs and the comments people had left. He wanted us to see the candles. He wanted us to see the destruction, the rubble. He wanted us to really take it in. And as we get back onto the planes, our commander tells us, do not be complacent. Remember what you saw here today. When we get to Guantanamo, I want you to remember the 3,000 Americans that we lost. I want you to remember the 3,000 innocent men, women, and children that died here for no valid reason. When you get to Guantanamo, I want you to remember what Islam did to us here. We got on the plane and flying down to Guantanamo, reality starts setting in. I start thinking to myself, you know, about what we're getting ourselves into, about what's getting ready to happen. And truth be told, I'm afraid. I was genuinely afraid. I was scared. I was concerned. I was trying to envision in my head who these people would be. You know, who was Al-Qaeda? Who was the Taliban? What would they look like? And in my mind, I'm seeing these men, they're prolific builds, big muscular men that would have nice, good beards, that no matter what way they would turn their head, the wind would always be blowing through their beard very charismatically. And they'd have giant swords, and they'd all be on horseback. Ultimately, what I was thinking was Charleston Heston and Anthony Quinn. That's what I saw in my head. That's what I was expecting when we got to Guantanamo. But when we landed, I realized that things were very different. As Anwar had mentioned, Guantanamo is about 98 degrees year-round, 100% humidity. It's close to the Tropic of Cancer. It's very hot. It's also considerably bright. It takes you a while to adjust to this brightness and this heat. You guys have humidity here in Chicago. I've been in Chicago in the summer, but it's not the same as it is in Guantanamo. After you adjust to this brightness, after you adjust to this heat, after you get used to sweating constantly, the next thing that kind of hits you is you start approaching Camp Delta. As we were beginning our first tour of Camp Delta, is the smell of Guantanamo, the smell of working in Guantanamo. Now what I mean by the smell is you have 780 Muslim men from 46 different countries that are essentially cooking in metal cages 24 hours a day. And make no mistake about it, there's something else going on. They're cooking in metal cages. Camp Delta is nothing more than concrete blocks and aluminum siding. We could go to Home Depot and buy everything we need to build Camp Delta. I don't know where the billions of dollars that we've invested in Guantanamo have gone to, because it certainly didn't go to constructing the facilities. But nonetheless, these men, they're cooking in these metal cages. They have no relief. They have no air conditioning. It's hot. There's nothing that they can do except for cook. They can't avoid the sun. When the sun is shining and beating on them, they burn. That's what happens. Now the reason that they smell isn't because they can't get relief, isn't because of the elements, but because most of the men in Guantanamo are fortunate if they can shower twice in a month. Twice in a month. The concept behind this is that if a detainee can't shower, if a detainee can't make wudu and can't make ghusl, he can't pray. If a detainee can't pray, then we'll break his knee. If we break his knee, he'll tell us. He'll tell us where the caves are. He'll tell us where the weapons are. He'll tell us where the training facilities are. He'll tell us what we want to know, so that way he can make wudu and he can pray. So anytime a detainee does something wrong, whether he fights with another detainee, he argues with the guard, he refuses to eat, he gets upset with his interrogator, whatever should happen, the first privilege we will take away from the detainee is the right to shower. So many of these men, unfortunately, smell. This is just physiology. This is how our bodies are built. This is what happens. The second problem is the lack of running sewage in Guantanamo. I don't really think that requires a great deal of explanation. You can imagine how urine and feces smells after it's been cooking in the sun for a few days. Maybe 5 days, 6 days, maybe a week, you know. Whenever the guards feel like getting around to cleaning it up, which nobody wants to clean it up, so this is sort of a punishment job. Then you have the military working dogs. Dogs don't care where they defecate and urinate. When the time comes, they just do their business. And of course, the K-9 officer, he doesn't have to clean it up. The guards don't want to clean it up. Nobody wants to clean it up. So intermittently, you've got dog urine and feces, you've got human urine and feces, you've got the men that smell. And then you have the guards. The guards, we really had no reason to stink. In all honesty, we didn't. But you have to understand, 75% of the guards that are working in Guantanamo are alcoholics. You have to be an alcoholic to deal with what you were doing in Guantanamo. Whether you're a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, whatever you believe, no religion believes that God has made them to torture and abuse other human beings. Nobody can do this easily. This does not come second nature to anyone. We are not made to torture, injure, and abuse our brothers. It just isn't how we are built. So many of the guards have resorted to alcoholism within a few weeks or a few months of being in Guantanamo to deal with what they were doing, to deal with the nightmares, to deal with the lack of sleep, to deal with all of the problems that they were facing emotionally and mentally as a result of the abusing and torturing that they were having to do each day. So they'd wake up the next morning hungover, they'd realize they were late for work, they'd put on the same clothes, get running out the door, they hadn't bathed, and as the day would go on, they'd be cooking, they'd be sweating, just like the detainees, but they'd be sweating out alcohol. I don't know if you've ever been around somebody who's sweating out alcohol, but they stink. So you have all these smells mixing together. You've got this brightness, you've got this heat. And the next thing that hit me, the next sense was sound. The sound of Guantanamo, the sound of Camp Delta. 780 Muslim men, 46 different countries. What does that boil down to? 19 languages. Arabic, Urdu, Pashto, Uyghur, Punjabi, Malaysian, Indonesian, French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, German, Swedish. Unfortunately, nobody speaks English, which was a problem for me because I speak English, sort of. I have public education, so I don't speak English well. It is what it is. So you have all these languages, all these sounds, all of this smell, all of this sights and feelings. It's all hitting you at once. And as we're beginning our tour of Camp Delta, I hear something and it sort of snaps me out of this haze. It brings me back to reality. It centers me. It brings me right back to where I should be. I hear a detainee rapping Eminem from the top of his lungs. And it's almost like the cartoons. A big question mark appears over my head. Wait a second, hold on. What's a detainee doing rapping Eminem? Muslims hate America. Muslims hate white people. Muslims hate rap. Muslims hate music. Muslims hate freedom. They certainly have to hate Eminem. What's this guy doing rapping Eminem? And as we're conducting our tour, we get next to the cell and I look at him and say, hey you, what are you doing rapping Eminem? You're not allowed to rap. I know about you guys. The Army told me about you guys. Fox told me about you guys. You hate America. You hate freedom. You hate white people. You hate rap. What are you doing rapping? The detainee tells me that when he goes to interrogation, the interrogator will usually chain him to the ground and leave him in a stress position for hours and hours, playing the same song on repeat at a deafeningly loud volume. His idea was that if he learned all of the words to this song, the next time he went to interrogation, he would start singing the song with a big smile on his face, just to upset the interrogator, to show the interrogator that it wasn't working, that the torture wasn't bothering him. This was his idea. Sure enough, he went to interrogation a few days later, and he started singing Eminem, and the interrogator got very upset. Punched him, kicked him a few times, and sent him back to the block. Said, you know, we're done. We're not doing this today. Because nothing's going to happen. It worked for him. Good for him. Unfortunately, Donald Rumsfeld was very creative when he wrote the SOP for Guantanamo. SOP, I'm sorry, Standard Operating Procedures, the rule book for Guantanamo. I'll give you an example. It is acceptable for interrogators to use any method or means of exploitation of a phobia for the purpose of gaining intelligence. Can anybody in this room explain to me what I just said? Anyone, please, feel free, shout out, whatever you think. What did I just say? Do anything necessary to get the information. Does that specify any limits? Does that specify any legalities of what's right or wrong? Or did I simply say do anything necessary? Exactly. It's gray language. It's written in a way that interrogators and guards can read into it what they want to read into. If you should happen to find out that a detainee is afraid of the dark, or that a detainee is afraid of confined spaces, it is more than acceptable to put a detainee in a coffin and leave him in a coffin for 8 hours, and just let him scream in absolute terror. If you should happen to find out that he has a phobia of arachnid, or insects, or snakes, or scorpions, it is acceptable to allow snakes and scorpions and spiders to slither and crawl all over him, to crawl into his mouth, to crawl on his face, and to not allow him to be able to do anything about it. If you should happen to find out that a detainee has a phobia of dogs, it is more than acceptable to let a military working dog into the interrogation room and say, "Dog off leash." And then you close the door and walk out. Whatever happens between that dog and detainee is what happens. These are the standard operating procedures in Guantanamo. Now, while we were doing these things, while I am doing these things to detainees, I start feeling down. 2 months, 3 months of my time in the Guantanamo, like everyone else, I had become an alcoholic. I couldn't deal with it. I did not want to be doing this. This was not what I had signed up to do. This was not my America. My America does not torture and abuse people. My America does not do this. This is not how we behave. I had been taught all of my life that America was the land of the free and the home of the brave. That we have these rules and regulations, we have democracy, that we are trying to liberate the rest of the world and give them a better standard of living. I have been fed all the propaganda that we see on TV, and I believed it all to be true. What we were doing in Guantanamo was 100% antithetical to everything that I had held true and believed about America. And as we were doing these things, it starts hitting me that this isn't right. I can't do this. I don't feel right about this. You know, I wasn't a religious individual. I was agnostic. I didn't believe in a religion. I believed that there was a God, but I wouldn't think that God would want me to be doing this. This just was not right. In no way, shape, or form could I justify what I was doing. I asked my team leader one day, Sergeant, I'm having a hard time doing this. I can't keep doing this. I need to get out. I need to get away from here. I need some time off. I need to get away. I need a break. I can't do this any longer. And he tells me, it's okay. You're going to be all right, Holdbrooks. When we get off from work, come over to my house. We'll have a few beers. We'll talk about it. You'll feel better. Standard Army answer. Have a few beers. You'll feel better. A couple of days go by. I didn't feel any better. I was still feeling the same way. That razor blade, that started looking really good. Started looking at the razor blade in my wrist, razor blade in my wrist, razor blade in my wrist. Make sure you cut down, not across, cut down. I started thinking about suicide almost every day. And I go and I tell my platoon sergeant, Sergeant, I can't handle this. I want out. I got to get out. I need to go home. I can't be here anymore. I can't keep doing this. And he looks at me and goes, Holdbrooks, you've been in the Army now for 5 months, huh? You're still kind of new. I'll tell you, Holdbrooks, I've been in the Army for 7 years. What we're doing here, it gets easier over time. You'll be okay. You got to remember who started this war. We didn't start this war, but we're going to end this war. Go home, have a couple beers, drive on. A few more days go by. I'm really strongly considering suicide. I go to the top person. I go to my commander. Sir, with all due respect, I need to go to mental health. I want to kill myself. I can't deal with this anymore. I can't deal with this place. This is wrong. This is not us. This is not how we should be behaving. I don't want to do this anymore. I need to see the doctor, please. I need to go see the doctor. Holdbrooks, if I send you to the doctor, I gotta send you, and you, and you. I gotta send everybody in my unit who wants to go to the doctor and talk about their feelings. I can't have all of my soldiers talking about their feelings all day long. Who's gonna take care of the mission? I can't send you, Holdbrooks. Go home, have a beer, drive on. Standard Army answer. As I'm torturing and abusing these men, and I'm thinking about suicide, I start observing what's going on. I see all the other guards, and all of us are feeling the same way. We're all miserable. We're all hating our job each day. We're only in the camp for 8 hours, but it's destroying us. But the detainees, they're waking up, and they're smiling, and they're praying, and they're talking with each other, and they're sharing knowledge and motivating each other. And it didn't add up. It boggled my mind. How can you be tortured and abused day in and day out and believe that God cares about you? How can you be tortured and abused and want to get up and pray to God? How can you think that God possibly cares? So I started asking a few of the detainees who speak enough broken English to answer questions, how can you think that God cares about you? We're going to torture and abuse you. We're going to cover you in pepper spray. We're going to slam you into the ground. We're going to shave off your beard. We're going to deny you food and water for days on end. And you think God cares about you? How can you get up and pray in a place like this? The detainee says to me that it was just Allah testing his deen. I didn't really understand the answer. I didn't understand the concept of what Allah was. Who is Allah? It was just a question for me. I didn't understand what deen was. So I asked another detainee, How can you wake up and go through this each day? How can you wake up and go through this and still smile? How can you wake up and pray and think that God cares about you? This is just Allah testing my faith. That I could understand. Somebody, something was testing his faith. Allah, whatever Allah was testing his faith. I could understand that. I asked another detainee, and another detainee, and another detainee. Some of them would tell me there were people who came before me, generations that came before me. Many groups had come before me who had it worse than this. And if this is the work that I have to deal with in life, bring it on. I can handle it. I can take this. This is just God testing me. Finally, a detainee says, this is just God testing me. And that's when all the answers made sense. That's when, oh, that's what you guys think. You think God is testing me. And you can get up and go through this each day because you think it's just a test? And as I look at the guards and I see how miserable they are, and I look at the detainees and I see their ability to persevere, I see their ability to wake up and smile and to deal with it each day, I start thinking to myself, maybe there's something more to Islam than I was told. Maybe the army didn't tell me everything that I needed to know about Islam. Maybe CNN and Fox didn't tell me everything I needed to know about Islam. Maybe there's something more to it. Maybe I should start asking some questions. So I went back to the same detainee as you. Why do you guys pray so much? You know, like, did you forget what you were praying for in the morning, so you prayed again when you remembered, and then you forgot it again, so you prayed again? Why don't you just write it down and you want to pray so much? Why are you guys always praying? Why are you praying that way? What's that way? What's that box that you pray to? Do you think that that box is Allah? Do you think that Allah lives in that box? Why do you guys speak to me in English, but you pray in another language? And he over there, he speaks Pashto, and you speak Arabic, but you guys pray in the same language. What's that about? Try to think of the questions you would have if you didn't know anything about Islam. Try to think of the questions you would have if you knew nothing about Islam. If you had not been a Muslim all of your life, if it was not a privilege that you've been born with, what questions would you have? I started asking the detainees these questions, and they didn't get upset with me. They didn't get offended. They didn't feel that I was infringing upon their privacy or their personal space. They would answer the question, and then they'd go about their day. They wouldn't go into dawah mode. They wouldn't tell me how it would be good for me to become a Muslim if only I knew. They wouldn't tell me all the beauty and attributes of Allah. They wouldn't tell me about how Islam is so superior to the rest of the religions. No. They would answer my questions and go about their day. It made no difference to them whether or not I wanted to be a Muslim, whether I wanted to learn about Islam. They would just answer the question and go about their business. All that the detainees wanted to do was live Islam. If they could wake up and live Islam that day, it was a good day. Despite whatever torture and abuse happened to them, if they could live Islam, it was a good day. One detainee who I'd grown very close with, who I'd had long conversations with, a brother by the name of Advocacy. He was a Moroccan-born detainee. Mark my words, somebody will ask me when this event is over, where was that brother from? He was a Moroccan-born detainee. Brother Irchidi and I, we've been having longer conversations. By longer, I mean like 5-10 minutes. In Guantanamo, you can't sit and talk with detainees for hours on end. You have to do exactly what I'm doing right now. You have to walk up and down the block, look into each cell, make sure that nobody's trying to kill themselves, nobody's trying to escape, nobody's building weapons, nobody's got stuff they shouldn't have. These are all things that the Army believed could happen. The Army believed that somehow the detainees could build guns. I don't know how. They had nothing, but they thought they could build guns. They thought they could escape from a prison, trapped within a prison, on an island, surrounded by minefields, surrounded by an ocean. Where are they going to escape to? Whatever. So this is what I would do, my entire shift. I can't just stop. I can't just sit and mingle with detainees. I have to make sure that nobody's trying to kill themselves. I have to make sure that nobody's trying to escape. So in these 5-minute, 10-minute conversations, we would have, a little bit more discussion about Islam, and he would teach me some things. And finally one day, he just says to me, you should open the beanhole of my door. I want to give you something. The beanhole is about this big. It's like 2 pizza boxes stacked on top of each other. It's where we serve food and take trash from a detainee. It's where we exchange laundry. When a detainee has to come out of the cell, it's where they put their hands through to get handcuffed. The beanhole is essentially a little entry port on the door of a detainee's cell. I asked him, it's not time for food, we're not exchanging laundry, but why do you want me to open the beanhole? I can't open the beanhole, I'll get in trouble. He tells me that he wants to give me the Quran. I didn't have an interest in reading the Quran, but he tells me it'll answer all the questions that I have. It'll help me. It'll make these conversations easier. I look to the right, no other guards. I look to the left, there's no other guards. I open it up, take the Quran, I take it, hide it in the bag. All right, good. And as I was going home that day, I mean, I was sweating. I was really afraid. I was concerned. If I got caught taking a Quran outside of the camp, if I got caught taking a gift from a detainee, oh man, it would have been bad. But I got home that night, and I started looking at it. I wasn't ready to read it. I didn't want to jump right in and read it. You gotta understand, I was an agnostic. I was happy enough with being an agnostic. I didn't have consequences. I didn't have to worry about heaven and hell because I didn't have a faith. I didn't have something controlling me. That's how I looked at religion. That's how I looked at it. It was control. But then I started thinking that, you know, if Brother Rashidi gave me his Quran, how is he going to read the Quran? In Guantanamo, you only get one Quran. When you arrive, they ask you what language you speak. You say Urdu, they give you an Urdu Quran. You say Arabic, they give you a Quran in Arabic. You say Pakistani, whatever language you say, they give you a Quran in that language, and that's it. You get one Quran. If a detainee should happen to accidentally drop his Quran on the ground or it falls into a toilet, he doesn't get another one. If a detainee's Quran gets covered in pepper spray by the guards, he doesn't get another one. If an interrogator decides to urinate or defecate on the Quran and then give it back to the detainee, he doesn't get another one. You get one Quran. So for Brother Rashidi to give me the Quran essentially meant that he was going to spend the rest of his life without the Quran. Because I was not going to try to sneak that thing back in, that was for sure. So as I came to this realization, I decided that out of respect for him, I should at least open it up and read it. I started reading it, started reading. And after the third night of reading it, I remember thinking to myself, this is the first time in my life I've read a religious book that has made sense. From the beginning to the end, it is an incredibly easy, simplistic religious book. It's almost like an instruction manual for living. Here's you, here's earth, here's heaven, this is where you want to be, here's the instructions, follow this. That's it. No mysticism, no magic, no fairy tales, no nonsense. Easiest religious book ever written, hands down, the Quran. I wasn't sold, I wasn't ready to be a Muslim yet, but I wanted to try it out. I wanted to take Islam for a test drive. The first thing that I tried to negate out of my life was alcohol. And as I stopped drinking a bottle of vodka each day, I stopped having hangovers. I started feeling better. I started gaining weight. I stopped feeling sick all the time. This was good. Oh, I get it. That's why those Muslims don't drink. You know, drinking alcohol, it's a poison. I get it. You know, we're putting poison in our body. That's why those Muslims don't drink. We got something going on here. I like this. Next thing I tried to change was smoking. Stop smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. This is terrible. It's hurting me. It's hard to breathe. I'm having a hard time doing things. I get easily irritable. I still get easily irritable. Ask Uncle, he'll tell you about it. I stopped smoking 2 packs of cigarettes each day, and I can start doing more push-ups. I can start running faster. I can start doing more sit-ups. Next thing I know, I got a higher PT score, and then I get promoted. I get it. That's why those Muslims don't smoke. You know, it's better for your health. You can do better. You feel better. That's why some of those Muslims don't smoke. Inshallah, look at this. I started changing each of these little habits in my life. Each one of these steps that I would take to make my life better, to live like a Muslim would live. I started improving. I started feeling great. I came to learn each one of these steps that I was taking towards Islam, Allah was taking many more steps towards me. After 3 months of trying things out, reading and learning, I decided that I wanted to become a Muslim. I didn't know how. I didn't know what I needed to do to be a Muslim. I just knew that I wanted to be a Muslim. Each one of these steps that I had made felt right. It felt natural. It felt like the way things were supposed to be. I wanted to be a Muslim. I went to work that day and I decided, you know, I'm going to find Brother Irachini and he's going to tell me what I got to do and I'm going to become a Muslim. This is what's going to happen today. That was all I wanted to do. Got to work, I went to the computer, I typed in his name. And sure enough, Brother Irachini didn't exist anymore. Now, there's only 3 ways that a detainee wouldn't exist. 1, suicide. I hadn't heard anything about a suicide. So he couldn't have possibly committed suicide. 2, we sent him home. Like that would ever happen. 3, he escaped. None of these things seemed possible. I had not heard about anybody escaping. I had not heard about any suicides. I had not heard about anybody being sent home. It was just as if Brother Irachidi had disappeared. So I started asking some of the other detainees, where's Irachidi? Where's Irachidi? Where's Irachidi? Finally, a detainee tells me, I saw him in Echo. Echo was another camp. We had 4 camps in Guantanamo when I was there. Echo was where we sent very violent individuals. It only housed 12 people, but that's where we sent very violent detainees. We also had Camp Iguana, which is where we had the children. There was 2 12-year-olds and a 13-year-old that we had in Camp Iguana. We had Camp 7, which is also known as Camp No. That's where Khaled Sheikh Mohammed and a couple of others are. And then we have Camp Delta. That's where the bulk of the 780 men. So I go to the computer and I pull up Camp Echo. He's not in Camp Echo either. Where is he? And the detainee saw him there. Where is he? And I keep asking around, and a few more days go by. And finally, I come across Brother Irachidi, and I ask him, where have you been? He tells me, oh, they've had me here, and they've had a trial. You are all eligible. Congratulations. My fear, my worry, is that we are not going to do something about this. We are not going to do something about this until it is too late. We are not going to stand up for ourselves. We are not going to use our rights. We are not going to be involved in the legal system until it has been taken away from us and we can't do it anymore. You have the right to freedom of speech. Give them. Talk about Islam. If your neighbors don't know that you are a Muslim, you are failing as a Muslim. If your co-workers don't know that you are a Muslim, you are failing as a Muslim. If your fellow endanger hundreds of lives as you're driving frantically in traffic, you can pray anywhere. The whole world is your masjid. Pray. Maybe people will see you praying and they'll come up and they'll ask you a question. Maybe they don't know. Maybe they don't know anything about Islam, but they feel comfortable with you. Maybe that conversation will lead them to learn more. I was not led to Islam because somebody explained to me how it is so superior. I was not led to Islam because I think the Quran is the greatest book. I was not led to Islam through dawah efforts. I was led to Islam because I watched men who were being tortured and abused day in and day out get up and live Islam. They can still be respectful. They can still be polite. They still behave the way we are taught that the Sahaba and the companions behave. I don't see many of us behaving like that. I am guilty of it, and I'm sure many others are guilty of it. We are rude, we are ill-tempered, we are not the examples that we should be. We are told that we are here to be the witnesses to the rest of mankind. How can we do that if we don't know how to behave, if we don't conduct ourselves in a way that is befitting of Islam? The Muslim Legal Fund of America is taking cases that are going to the Supreme Court. That is a big deal. That's as big of a deal as it gets. You do not go any higher than the Supreme Court. They are challenging individuals and they are saying we are not going to be pushed around any longer. We are here, and you have to accept it, and you have to give us our rights. We all love to give money to Syria, and we should. We all love to give money to Palestine, and we should. When the tragedy, when the floods happened in Pakistan, we wanted to give money, and we did, and it's good, we should. But you have to think about fiqh of priority, the understanding of priority. If we do not defend our legal right to give money to these people who are in need, we will not be allowed to continue giving them money. We have to defend ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves. Nobody is going to take care of us but us. I ask that you please go home. You please think about this. You please look these things up and learn. And do not be afraid to be a Muslim. You have the best religion. You have the best faith. You have the only true faith. Live it and share it. Let others see the beauty of this. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
وقدا